On May 27, 2023, at 3 o'clock in the morning in the city of Busan, South Korea, a taxi driver received a call to pick up a passenger. He drove to the designated location expecting what most taxi drivers encounter at that hour on a weekend night: some drunk adult stumbling out of a bar, needing a safe ride home. Instead, what he found surprised him completely. The person waiting for him was a girl who looked young enough to be in high school, perhaps even middle school. It was an unusual hour for someone so young to be out alone, but the driver was just there to provide a service. Then he noticed the suitcase. The girl was carrying a large, heavy suitcase, so heavy that she appeared to struggle getting it into the vehicle. He offered to help, but she insisted she didn't need assistance, and managed to load it into the car herself. She climbed in and gave him a destination, a spot near the Nakdong River in a forested park area of Busan, a remote location surrounded only by trees and darkness. How strange, the taxi driver thought. What was a girl this young doing at 3 in the morning with a heavy suitcase, heading to an isolated forest? Something about the entire situation felt wrong, deeply wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling, so after dropping her off, he decided to report the incident to police. By 6 o'clock that morning, officers had arrived at the forested area where the driver said he'd left the girl. There, they discovered the dismembered remains of a woman's body. It didn't take long for investigators to identify the suspect. South Korea is saturated with security cameras on nearly every street corner, in every building, capturing nearly every movement people make in public spaces. This girl had been recorded on multiple cameras, skipping down the street with the suitcase that would soon be used to transport a corpse. Her name was Jung Yoo-Jung. If you find yourself drawn to the darkest corners of the human psyche, to cases where ordinary appearances conceal something profoundly disturbing, then subscribe to this channel. There are many more stories like this across Asia, each one revealing something unsettling about the capacity for violence that can hide behind the most innocent faces. Jung Yoo-Jung's case is one of those rare crimes that shocks even seasoned investigators, not because of its brutality alone, but because of the cold calculation behind it, the meticulous planning, and the terrifying emptiness at its core. In South Korea, there are strict laws protecting the identities of both criminals and victims, particularly when they're young. However, in especially serious cases, police sometimes release this information when they deem it to be in the public interest. As such, we don't have extensive background information about Jung Yoo-Jung. Her name and photograph were released to the press, but much of her past remains obscured. What we do know paints a picture of profound isolation. She was born in 1999 in South Korea, making her 23 years old when the crime occurred, though she looked significantly younger, young enough to pass for a teenager, which would later become relevant to her planning. From an early age, Jung Yoo-Jung never had friends. She wasn't raised by her parents, but by her grandfather. At school, classmates described her as invisible. She would arrive, attend classes in complete silence, and leave without interacting with anyone. She didn't participate in conversations, didn't join social activities, maintained no friendships. Interestingly, it wasn't that she was bullied or actively excluded. Many of her former classmates reported that they had tried to talk to her, attempted to include her in their groups, but she would barely respond, offering only monosyllabic answers, yes, no, before retreating back into her shell. It was her own choice to remain separate, isolated in a way that seemed almost deliberate. The problem intensified after she graduated from high school. While she was still attending school, she at least had the structure of daily attendance, the requirement to leave her house and be around other people, even if she didn't engage with them. But after graduation, she didn't enroll in university. She didn't get a job. For 3 consecutive years, she spent 100% of her time secluded at home, barely leaving her room. But she lived with her grandfather. What did he think about this? Apparently, during those 3 years, Jung Yoo-Jung told him she was studying for the civil service exam, preparing to become a public servant. She also claimed to be looking for other job opportunities. Her grandfather probably didn't worry too much, thinking it was just a difficult phase she'd eventually overcome, that she'd find work soon enough. According to the television program Unanswered Questions, a well-known true crime show in South Korea that often unearths new details about cases they cover, Jung Yoo-Jung did attend at least one job interview during those years. The program managed to interview the person who had conducted that interview, and he described the entire experience as deeply strange. Jung Yoo-Jung had sent an email expressing interest in the position, and the message said something like, "I am proactive and enjoy working with people. I really want this job. Thank you." This was completely false. She didn't enjoy working with people at all. But during the actual interview, everything fell apart. The interviewer said she could barely speak, struggled to maintain eye contact, and gave such brief, uncomfortable responses that the interview ended quickly. He said her demeanor was so odd, so disconnected, that he immediately knew she wouldn't be suitable for any position requiring human interaction. She was rejected from multiple job opportunities, many because she didn't speak fluent English, a skill increasingly required in South Korea's competitive job market. This pattern of rejection apparently bred resentment, a growing anger at her circumstances, at other people who seemed to have what she lacked. And somewhere in those years of isolation, something darker took root. She began researching murder. Her search history, later examined by police, showed queries about how to kill someone, how to dispose of a body, how to avoid detection. These weren't casual searches driven by morbid curiosity. They were methodical, detailed, the searches of someone planning something terrible. Jung Yoo-Jung decided she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. Not for revenge, not for any particular reason beyond pure curiosity about the act itself. She wanted to experience taking a life, to understand what that felt like, and she began planning how to make it happen. First, she needed to find a victim. She wanted someone her own age, someone who wouldn't be physically difficult to overpower. She began searching online for English tutors in the Busan area, young women who advertised private tutoring services. Eventually, she found her target, a woman named Arin. Arin was everything Jung Yoo-Jung wasn't. She was a university student at a prestigious institution, studying to become a teacher. She spoke fluent English. She had friends, a social life, plans for the future. She was only 26 years old, young and full of potential. She offered private English tutoring to make extra money, advertising her services online as many students do. It was this advertisement that brought her into Jung Yoo-Jung's crosshairs. But Jung Yoo-Jung knew that a 23-year-old woman showing up asking for English tutoring might seem suspicious. University-age students typically don't need tutors for basic English conversation, so she began crafting an elaborate deception. She purchased a school uniform, the kind worn by middle and high school students in South Korea. She created a fake identity as a concerned mother looking for a tutor for her daughter. She sent messages to Arin from a phone she'd set up specifically for this purpose, carefully building trust over multiple conversations. She asked questions about Arin's teaching style, her rates, her availability. She played the role perfectly, a caring parent seeking the best education for her child. They arranged to meet on May 26, 2023, at Arin's apartment. Jung Yoo-Jung showed up wearing the school uniform, playing the part of the student, rather than revealing herself as the mother who had made the arrangements. To Arin, this probably seemed like a minor miscommunication. Perhaps the mother was running late and had sent her daughter ahead. The young woman welcomed Jung Yoo-Jung into her home, probably offering tea or water, settling in to begin what she thought would be a normal tutoring session. She had no way of knowing that the person sitting across from her had come there to kill her. According to what police were later able to piece together from evidence, Jung Yoo-Jung attacked Arin from behind, strangling her. The attack was sudden and brutal. Arin fought back. There were signs of a struggle, evidence that she had tried desperately to defend herself. But Jung Yoo-Jung was determined, and eventually Arin stopped moving. She was dead. Jung Yoo-Jung had successfully killed someone. She had satisfied her curiosity about what it felt like to take a life. What happened next reveals something even more disturbing about Jung Yoo-Jung's psychology. Rather than immediately fleeing the scene, rather than panicking about what she'd done, she stayed in Arin's apartment for hours. Multiple news sources reported that she spent this time essentially playing house, living as though she were Arin. She went through Arin's belongings, tried on her clothes, explored her life. When she eventually left the apartment and was captured on security cameras, she was wearing one of Arin's jackets. There are rumors that Jung Yoo-Jung's favorite film was Hwang Cha, a movie in which one of the main characters steals another woman's identity, and that she may have been inspired by this film to not just kill Arin, but to attempt to take over her life in some way. However, the truth of this claim is difficult to verify. Eventually, Jung Yoo-Jung had to deal with the practical problem of Arin's body. She couldn't just leave it there, so she retrieved a large suitcase she'd brought with her. She'd planned for this, had known she would need a way to transport remains. But first she needed supplies. Security cameras captured her leaving Arin's apartment building, skipping down the street with the empty suitcase, looking for all the world like a young girl on her way to catch a train for a trip. She went to a nearby convenience store and purchased a list of deeply suspicious items: knives, cleaning products, garbage bags. Then she returned to Arin's apartment to dismember the body. Many people who have seen the security footage of Jung Yoo-Jung skipping down the street with that suitcase find it deeply disturbing. She has the features of someone innocent, young, almost childlike. And she appears happy, carefree, literally skipping along just minutes after committing murder. The disconnect between her appearance and what she had just done, between her demeanor and the horror she was about to inflict on Aaron's body, is genuinely chilling. It suggests someone operating without normal emotional responses, without the guilt or fear that would grip most people in that situation. Jung Yoo-Jung spent the rest of that night dismembering Aaron's body, placing the pieces in plastic bags. Everything was captured by the security cameras that blanket South Korean cities. Her entering the apartment building, leaving to buy supplies, returning, leaving again hours later. By around 3 in the morning, she had filled the suitcase with some of Aaron's remains and called a taxi. Many news outlets initially reported that the taxi driver had seen bloodstains on the suitcase, and that's why he reported it to police. However, the Unanswered Questions program clarified that the driver never actually left his car or touched the suitcase. He reported it to police simply because the entire situation seemed strange. A girl that young, at that hour, with a heavy suitcase, going to an isolated forest. By 6 o'clock in the morning, Jung Yoo-Jung was arrested and taken in for questioning. Only 3 hours had passed between when she left her house to dispose of Aaron's remains and when she was in police custody. The evidence connecting her to the crime was overwhelming, particularly given the extensive security camera footage tracking her movements throughout the entire night. It was only after her arrest that police began to understand just how peculiar Jung Yoo-Jung really was. During interrogation, she proved to be profoundly unreliable, telling multiple lies in what seemed to be attempts to manipulate police, to make herself seem pitiable, to minimize what she'd done. When she was first arrested, the first thing she told officers was that her stomach hurt, that she felt like she was bleeding internally. She was immediately taken to a hospital where numerous tests were performed. Nothing was wrong with her. It was entirely fabricated, an attempt to delay the interrogation, to buy herself time, to play the role of someone fragile and sympathetic. Next, she invented a story claiming she wasn't the person who killed Aaron. She said she had arranged to meet Aaron that day, and when she arrived at the apartment, she found a stranger in the process of murdering her. This stranger, she claimed, forced her to dispose of Aaron's body, threatening her if she didn't comply. It was a story without any logical foundation. Police dismissed it immediately because there was absolutely no evidence of a third person being involved. Jung Yoo-Jung had been captured on multiple security cameras. There was the entire elaborate plan she'd constructed to deceive Aaron, the school uniform she'd purchased, the fake mother persona. Why would she have done all of that if she wasn't planning to commit the crime herself? Additionally, searches found on her phone showed she had researched how to hide a body long before Aaron's death. After this story fell apart, Jung Yoo-Jung tried again, creating a new narrative. This time, she claimed that she and Aaron had gotten into a fight, and Aaron had died as a result of that altercation. She was trying to make it seem like the killing wasn't premeditated, that it had been a tragic accident born from a conflict that got out of hand. But once again, no evidence supported this version of events. If there had been a physical fight, Jung Yoo-Jung's DNA should have been found under Aaron's fingernails. According to this new story, Aaron had supposedly scratched her face during their struggle. But there was no DNA evidence at all supporting this claim. She was lying again. It was only after extensive interrogation that Jung Yoo-Jung finally confessed to the truth. This time, she said the motive was simply that she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. There was no deeper reason, no personal vendetta, no complicated backstory, just curiosity about murder. And this confession, police believed, was finally truthful. Police also developed a theory about why Aaron specifically had been chosen as the victim, since the two women had no prior connection. They believe Jung Yoo-Jung harbored intense envy toward people like Aaron, people who spoke fluent English, who attended prestigious universities, who seemed to have everything Jung Yoo-Jung had always wanted but never achieved. Aaron represented the life Jung Yoo-Jung felt had been denied to her. She had been rejected from multiple job opportunities because she didn't speak fluent English. Aaron spoke it perfectly. Theoretically, Jung Yoo-Jung had targeted her because she wanted that life, wanted to inhabit that identity, wanted to be someone who had prospects and potential instead of someone who spent 3 years locked in a room going nowhere. South Korea uses a psychopathy assessment test in cases like this, a diagnostic tool consisting of 20 items where subjects can score from 0 to 40. If you score 25 or higher, you're considered to have psychopathic traits. Jung Yoo-Jung scored 28 points. 1 point higher than Kang Ho-soon, one of South Korea's most infamous serial killers who murdered at least 8 women. Whether this test has true validity is debatable. There are many criticisms of such assessments. But regardless, the score shocked many people in South Korea. This young woman, who looked like a teenager, who seemed so small and innocuous, had a psychopathy score higher than a confirmed serial killer. In November 2023, just 6 months after the crime, Jung Yoo-Jung received a sentence of life imprisonment. It was a remarkably swift conviction for a criminal who was also caught remarkably quickly. Many people find this ironic. She spent 3 years isolated in her room, invisible to the world, doing nothing, going nowhere. Then, in a span of less than 24 hours, she committed a carefully planned murder and was arrested. Her crime solved almost immediately because of the extensive surveillance infrastructure of modern South Korea. The invisible girl who wanted to know what it felt like to kill became one of the most visible criminals in recent Korean history. As we examine Jung Yoo-Jung's case, we're confronted with questions that have no comfortable answers. What creates someone like her? Was it the isolation, the years spent alone in a room without human connection, that warped her psychology so profoundly? Was there something inherently wrong with her from the beginning? Some fundamental absence of empathy that would have manifested regardless of her circumstances? The nature versus nurture debate takes on particularly disturbing dimensions when applied to cases like this. There's also the question of whether anything could have prevented this. Her grandfather seems to have been caring, but perhaps not fully aware of how deeply troubled she was. Her former classmates remember trying to befriend her, to include her, but being rebuffed. The interviewer who spoke to her for a job position found her strange but had no reason to suspect she was dangerous. Where in this chain of events could intervention have occurred? At what point does social awkwardness and isolation cross over into something that should trigger alarm bells? These are difficult questions with no clear answers, but they're worth asking. The randomness of Erin's selection as a victim is particularly haunting. She wasn't targeted because of anything she'd done, any relationship she had with Jung Yoo-Jung, any wrong she'd committed. She was targeted because she advertised English tutoring services online and happened to be the one Jung Yoo-Jung chose. She was simply living her life, studying, working toward her goals, trying to make extra money through tutoring, and that ordinary decision to advertise her services put her in the path of someone who wanted to know what murder felt like. There's no justice in that, no logic, no fairness, just random, senseless violence. For Erin's family, the tragedy is compounded by the knowledge that their daughter was killed for no reason at all beyond someone's curiosity. At least when there's a comprehensible motive, jealousy, revenge, financial gain, families can try to make sense of it, can fit the crime into some kind of narrative framework. But being told your loved one died because someone wondered what killing felt like, that offers no closure, no understanding, just an abyss of senselessness. The security camera footage of Jung Yoo-Jung skipping down the street has become almost iconic in South Korean true crime discussions, a visual symbol of how appearances can be utterly deceiving. She looks like someone's younger sister, someone's student, someone who should be worried about homework and part-time jobs and normal young adult concerns. Instead, she had just committed an act of horrifying violence and was on her way to dispose of the evidence, apparently unburdened by guilt or fear. That disconnect between what we see and what's actually happening is what makes the footage so disturbing. It forces viewers to confront the reality that evil doesn't always look like what we expect it to look like. Sometimes it looks young and small and innocent. The speed with which Jung Yoo-Jung was caught is a testament to modern surveillance technology. In previous generations, this crime might have remained unsolved for weeks, months, or even permanently. But the combination of security cameras, digital records of her internet searches, and the taxi driver's willingness to report something that seemed wrong meant that justice, such as it is, was swift. Within hours, police knew who they were looking for. Within days, they had assembled an overwhelming case against her. The technology that makes many people uncomfortable because of privacy concerns, the cameras everywhere, the digital tracking, proved crucial in solving this crime quickly. Yet even with a confession, even with a life sentence handed down, there's something unsatisfying about the resolution. Jung Yoo-Jung is in prison where she'll remain for the rest of her life. But has anything really been answered? Do we understand her any better? The confession that she wanted to know what killing felt like doesn't really explain anything. It just restates the question in different terms. Why would someone want to know that? What was missing in her that most people have? Some fundamental element of humanity that creates natural barriers against such curiosity. These questions may never have answers. There's also the unsettling reality that Jung Yoo-Jung got what she wanted. She wondered what killing felt like. And now she knows. She satisfied her curiosity. Yes, she's paying for it with her freedom, spending her life in prison. But in some twisted way, she achieved her goal. She took a life, experienced that act, and can never unknow it. For someone whose psychology is as profoundly abnormal as hers appears to be, is prison even a punishment in the way it would be for most people? Or is it just another form of isolation, not so different from the room she spent 3 years in before deciding to kill someone? The case raises broader questions about isolation and its effects on human psychology. We live in an era where it's increasingly possible to withdraw from society entirely, to spend years alone in a room with only the internet for company. Social isolation has always existed, but modern technology makes it easier than ever to survive while having virtually no human contact. We order food online, communicate through screens, work remotely, entertain ourselves with streaming services. For most people, this convenience enhances life without replacing human connection entirely. But for someone already predisposed to isolation, already struggling with social interaction, it can create a feedback loop where withdrawal becomes easier and easier until you're completely disconnected from normal human relationships and the empathy they engender. Jung Yoo-Jung's 3 years of isolation weren't just about physical seclusion. They were years without the constant small interactions that keep most people grounded in social reality. The casual conversations with coworkers that teach us how to read emotional cues. The friendships that create obligations and connections. The routine of leaving the house, seeing other people, being reminded that you exist as part of a larger human community. Without any of that, with nothing but a screen and her own thoughts, perhaps her moral compass simply atrophied from disuse until killing someone became just another thing she was curious about. No different from wondering what a new food tastes like, or what it feels like to skydive. As we close our examination of Jung Yoo-Jung's crime, we're left with the image that started this story. A young woman skipping down a dark street with a suitcase full of human remains, looking for all the world like she hadn't a care beyond catching her train on time. That image encapsulates something profound about the capacity for evil to hide behind ordinary appearances, about how the most disturbing violence can be committed by people who look nothing like our cultural images of monsters. Jung Yoo-Jung is serving life in prison now, removed from society, no longer a threat. But the questions her case raises remain unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. What creates someone capable of such cold-blooded curiosity about killing? How do we identify such people before they act? And what do we do with the knowledge that somewhere, right now, someone else might be wondering the same things she wondered, conducting the same searches she conducted, planning something just as terrible? If this case has left you contemplating the darkest aspects of human psychology, the mysteries that hide behind closed doors and in isolated rooms across Asia, then subscribe to this channel. There are many more stories waiting to be told, each one a window into the shadows where ordinary lives intersect with extraordinary evil. These stories matter not because they're entertaining, but because they remind us to pay attention, to notice when something seems wrong, to trust our instincts when a situation feels off. That taxi driver who reported something strange potentially prevented Jung Yoo-Jung from claiming more victims, from continuing to satisfy her curiosity, sometimes paying attention, speaking up, trusting that feeling that something isn't right. Sometimes that makes all the difference between a single tragedy and many more.